We are back with another episode of Eyes on Indianapolis, the series where we see if VGC newcomers can take Pokemon champions from day one to the top of the Indianapolis Regional Championship. This weekend was the largest tournament VGC has ever seen. The Grand Champions Festival, hosted by Scrawl VGC, was a historic tournament with over 6,000 players.
It's crazy to think about that even just like 10, 15 years ago, these tournaments were being held in these tiny rooms with maybe 100 people showing up in total.
In day one, so across all of those 6,000 players, there was a usage of 50% of Sneasler amongst all players, followed up by Garchomp at 40%, and then Incineroar is down to 37% amongst all players.
Imagine 3,000 Sneaslers showing up at your door.
Moving on to day two, Sneasler still remained on top at 51%. Garchomp moved up as well to do 49% of usage, and then King Gambit actually snuck up into the top 3 of usage for day 2 at 45%. Once they made it through Swiss Round 2 and into the top cut of the top 16 players, King Gambit then jumped to be on 55% of the top remaining teams, followed by Sneasler and Garchomp tied for 50% usage. The rest of the tournament, although not quite cracking, the top percentage of usages, there were still a lot of Talonflame, Milotic, Aegislash, and Rotom Wash that were being used that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, with Talonflame, I saw quite a few Talonflames. I think being able to get the priority Tailwinds up is really nice. Milotic, again, with the Incineroars running around, can boost that competitive, and then it's just really bulky. Aegislash as well, counters a lot of the top threats like Sneasler and Floette. So in prepping for this huge tournament, I wanted to play a similar team to my first tournament run that centered around a dual Mega strategy with Mega Floette and Mega Delphox. During my test matches on Showdown, I was struggling with 2 Pokemon that were kind of giving me a lot of issues. One was Rotom Wash with Will-O-Wisp. So what I ended up doing was adding Lumberry to my Garchomp. So just kind of having the Will-O-Wisp and being able to keep my Garchomp unburned was really big. Also, opposing Aerodactyls were tricky for me. Speed ties, and they were taking out my Sneaslers with their one dual wing beat. I ended up making my Sneasler a lot bulkier. I traded a little bit of speed and some of its attack to add into its bulk. So just kind of being able to keep Sneasler around, especially with its unburden, keeping it fast can just kind of really threaten a lot. So just going over my rounds. The first round I was playing against a Mega Scissor team in the rain, which is a bit of a tricky matchup for me, just because Delphox in the rain isn't great, and then Mega Scissor with its bullet punches can take out Floette. But I ended up deciding to bring Floette anyway. I kept it in the back, and kind of my main game plan was take out the Scissor as fast as possible and then let Floette handle the rest. But I ended up losing close game 1. I brought Aerodactyl, which ended up being a bad choice because the bullet punches could just take him out in 2 shots, so he wasn't really doing anything. So I adjusted by bringing Garchomp instead, and I won both of the last 2 games by being able to chip away at the Scissor, dealing with the rain, and then finishing up with Floette. In round 2, I ended up losing a close 3-game set. The first game, I fell behind super fast. I lost the Aerodactyl speed tie at the beginning of the game, and he rock slided and double flinched both of my Pokemon. So without those flinches, I would have been able to get a Tailwind up with my arrow or put major damage with Mega Floette and a Dazzling Gleam. But because they both flinched, I was super far behind. I didn't have my Tailwind up. I didn't have any damage on their Pokemon, and they were able to kind of easily take the first game. But I adjusted in game 2 by bringing Sneasler to add some fake out pressure, was able to get Tailwind up, and I won the second game pretty easily. The third, I lost an extremely close game. He had brought Kangaskhan in the first 2 games, but he didn't bring it in the third. So I was a little bit lost on that. I was not expecting Charizard, even though I was able to deal with Charizard easily. Kind of threw me off a little bit. I made a couple of misplays at the end. Quick Protect when I meant to click Tailwind on one turn that I think could have secured me the victory. In round 3, I bounced back with an easy 2-0 victory. This was against a Floette and Sinistra Trick Room team. However, I noticed that my opponent didn't really have anything to deal with my Delphox. He had a Torkoal, but other than that, nothing was dealing with Delphox. So I just led Delphox in both games. The first game I took out Sinistra turn 1, so he wasn't able to get Trick Room up, and I just kind of snowballed from there. And then in game 2, he used Fake Out on Incineroar, so he was able to get his Trick Room up. But I just had so much offensive pressure, and he wasn't pressuring much back to me that it ended up being a a pretty decisive 2-game victory. In round 4, I was playing against a Mega Skarmory and Primarina team, and this was an extremely close set. In game 1, I took out his Mega Skarmory early on with a good read on doubling it up. Then he also took out my Sneasler pretty early, and was able to secure the win with Primarina, who I struggled to KO without my Sneasler and its strong poison-type moves. So in the second 2 games, I decided to keep Sneasler in the back and kind of save it so that I could win that one-on-one at the end against Primarina. In game 3, he took out my Delphox early on, which kind of was a little bit scary for me. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to deal with his Skarmory, but I was able to get a Gunk Shot Poison on Garchomp and put it into Sucker Punch range. And then I was able to Sucker Punch both the Garchomp and the Skarmory to finish out the game. In round 5, I was playing against an interesting Floette team with Dragapult, but this was another close 3-game set. In game 1, I had a pretty bad lead as he led both of his Ghost types. With Ghost types resisting Poison, as well as not being able to fake them out, he got a big Wave Crash off, knocking out my Sneasler, and I was just too far behind to come back. But I adjusted in the next game by leading Kingambit and Floette, which threatened huge damage into both of his Ghost-type leads. And I was able to take the game fairly easily by just pressuring a lot of damage with Floette early. So I knew in game 2 that my opponent would definitely bring Sneasler to try to deal with my Floette. So I ended up leading Aerodactyl instead, which ended up being a great play. I was able to get a Tailwind up and take out the Sneasler with a dual Wing Beat, so then Floette handled the rest of the game. In round 6, I lost both games against a hard Trick Room team with Incineroar, Hatterene, and Farigiraf. This one felt really impossible for me to beat. He had a way to guarantee to get Trick Room up because he had such a slow team that was even slower than my Kingambit. So on turn 1 of the first game, I tried to make this Giga read. I was expecting him to fake out with Incineroar and get Trick Room up, but he ended up not using fake out. He just went directly for the attack into my Delphox. Went down on turn 1, and I was just way too far behind. In game 2, I tried to adjust a little bit. I kind of let them get Trick Room up and then kind of sent out Kingambit, kind of tried to stall it out with some protects and threaten damage with Kingambit, but it still didn't really quite work out the way I was hoping, and my opponent made some good reads again in game 2, and I lost. In round 7, I was playing against a Mega Aggron team. He paired it with a pretty standard Rain team around it. So I came close in game 1, was able to take out the Aggron. I was kind of expecting him to switch in Rain, but he never did, and so I was able to get a couple of good Heat Waves off. But then I made a wrong read by not Sucker Punching a Basculegion. He ended up just going for the attack, and my Sucker Punch could have taken it out, but instead I lost the Pokemon and lost the game. And then in game 2, my opponent made more adjustments. I tried bringing in Floette in the second game just because the Rain I know would be bad for my Delphox. And again, my opponent won pretty handily as I was not able to get my Floette in a position to do well. But overall, I feel like I piloted this team pretty well, and I feel good about progress that I made, kind of the game plan that I came up with going into the tournament, and the adjustments I made during the tournament.
After a week of prepping for a tournament, 7 rounds of the tournament, who is your MVP of the week?
My MVP is Gunk Shot! Well, Sneasler, but Gunk Shot! The one adjustment I made that won me at least 2 or 3 of my games this weekend was switching out Dire Claw for Gunk Shot on my Sneasler. Dire Claw being nerfed from 50% status to 30% status. Of course, Dire Claw can still get some more useful statuses like Sleep and Paralysis, but I decided it was worth sacrificing the accuracy of Gunk Shot, which is only 80% accurate compared to 100% accurate on Dire Claw, but it comes with a base power boost up to 120, and the status chance is essentially the same. These stronger Gunk Shots are a guaranteed one-shot onto Mega Floette, and pretty much any fairy type in the Mega right now. But I also got a couple of clutch poison statuses with it, whittling down my opposing threats in endgame situations. And of course, there were a couple times where I missed my Gunk Shots when I needed them to hit, and maybe lost my Sneasler in the process, but my MVP this week, the move, Gunk Shot.
This upcoming week, we will be back on the grind We've hit about the halfway point from when Champions was released to the Indianapolis tournament. And at this point, we're going to be hitting the ladder in Champions and Showdown and just testing as much as we can so that we can come back next week and let you know how we're doing.
Be sure to subscribe to follow along on our journey, and go ahead and check out our previous videos that have led us up to this point in our Champions journey. Leave a like and comment telling how you did in the Grand Champions Festival if you participated and who the ace was on your team. See you next week.